This is Road Noise, Life 1 Mile at a Time, episode 67. It's okay to ask for help. Hello and welcome again to another episode of Road Noise Life 1 Mile at a Time. I'm your host, Michael Blackston, and in this episode, I'm going to talk about a topic that I am the world's worst about, and that is asking for help. And I'm going to explain why it's okay and probably good for you to ask for help. It's funny, this is the second episode in a row that I had planned on talking about building a business on a shoestring, and that episode is coming up, but it's the second week in a row that I really didn't feel that one quite yet, even though I've already got the show notes written out and everything, and even got the number 67 up above the title on the show notes and everything. But something told me to talk about asking for help today. And apparently, I'm not the only one that has this problem. I was listening to someone earlier in the week actually in my Sunday school class, and they mentioned asking for help and trying to do everything yourself. And everybody in the class seemed to say that that was a problem that they tended to have, that they liked to get things done themselves, even when it was detrimental to their situation, maybe even to their health, and that asking for help was a problem for them. And I know it has always been a problem for me, to the point that several people have told me, Michael, it's a problem. You need to ask for help. You need to accept help when it's offered, and when it's not offered and you need it, you need to go ahead and ask for it. And I know that's true. There are 3 examples I'm going to give you of situations, too, where I hurt myself badly because I didn't ask for help. And I'm going to give you examples of those, and then I'm going to talk about a little bit later on how I should have gone about those situations, what I should have done, and why it would have helped out. I'm a creative person. I am one of those people. I have something in my head. I have 1,000 things in my head going on all of the time. Thousands and thousands of things. At least that's what it feels like to me. And because I'm a creative person, and because I know I have a vision inside my head of what I want something to be like, I kind of feel like I'm the best man for the job because I see it clearly. I have a clear vision of the end game. The problem with that is it's not that easy always to get to the end game without help. And I think that's the case for a lot of creative type people. A project that may be bigger than you needs to get done, but because you see the end game in your head, you really don't want anybody else to put their hands on it because you want it to end up the way you want to. And you know that if you delegate and let other people try to bring forth what you tell them, it's not going to look exactly like it is in your head or be exactly like you envision it to be. Creatives are bad about that. And in this example I'm going to give you is about building sets for live stage performances. Anybody who has worked with me in the past on a show that I've directed knows that I end up doing a lot of the work myself. I'm not going to say 100% of it. I usually, in fact, do have a crew of people that help me, and they're a huge help, and it wouldn't get done without them. But I try my best to end up having my hands in every single aspect of it, and many times doing more than I need to do. I'll just do that. Don't worry about it. I'll do it. And my friends will come up and say, Michael, let me help you with that. Give me something to do. Tell me how I can help you because I can see that you're stressed. I can see that it's wearing on you. You're tired. You're exhausted. I can see it in the way you're moving, in the way you're talking. I can see it in your eyes. You're exhausted. Let somebody help you. And I just say, I'd rather do it myself. I have built so many set pieces that needed to have 2 or 3 people building them at least. I've built myself. Props, platforms, things that really required more muscle than just myself. I remember one time when we did a Broadway review at the Elbert Theater, early on in my involvement with the Elberton Theater, I was building this set, and it was a 3-tiered platform thing, and it started on one side of the stage and kind of circled around back to the other side of the stage, and there were 3 levels. The level at stage left was the lowest. You went from the stage up a couple of steps to the first rising platform, then across the back of the stage, or upstage, as theatrical people will know the terminology. That's on a second level. It would go from stage left up a level all the way across the back and upstage. And then coming back downstage at stage right was the highest level. And so you'd go up from upstage to downstage up another level. Well, that created an issue because there was only one of me several times building that set at several moments when other people offered to help, but I said, no, don't bother. I'm going to be doing it late at night. And that's one of the reasons I end up doing things a lot by myself, is because, like building sets, I like to do them late at night. It's just something about being at the theater at 3 o'clock in the morning building a set. I don't know. I guess I'm insane, but that's just me. I remember doing that tallest piece, holding pieces, heavy pieces up with one hand. I mean, pieces that should have had a couple of people holding it up while a third person did the screwing. I was attempting to do it all by myself, and I ended up hurting myself a couple of times in that just because I was refusing to let someone help. So that's one example. But everybody's not a creative person, and sometimes you just don't want to bother anybody, even when you need the help. I hate asking for help because I don't want to put anybody out, and this goes also for accepting help when it's offered to me. Because, again, I get offered help all the time, and then I just say, nah. More likely than not, I'm going to refuse it if it's offered. Example of this is moving a lawnmower, and I completely threw out my back. My grandma had loaned a riding lawnmower to someone who was in a situation where they had to move, and they just left the riding lawnmower there. My grandma said, I want you to go get that lawnmower. I had a truck. She said, would you go get that riding lawnmower and bring it back to me? I said, yeah. And she made sure to insist that I get someone to help me. Now, you don't do that by yourself. She probably knew me all too well. You get someone to help you, that thing's going to be too heavy. Well, in my mind, I'm like, I can get the front end up on the back of the truck, and then I'll lift the heavy end, the back end, and I'll just kind of lift it up and roll it on. I really don't need anybody to help me. Well, that's exactly what I did. I went to the place. I backed my truck up, I lifted the front end up, and that was okay. Kind of heavy, but it was okay. I got it up there. Then I decided I was going to go ahead and lift that back part up and get it up on the truck, rolled up on the truck. Didn't use a ramp, didn't do anything like that because I'm an idiot. I couldn't do it. I tried, and I just could not get it up there. So I let it stay until I could get some help, and a little bit later I got somebody to help me go get it, or I sent somebody to get it. I'm not sure exactly how, but it got back to my grandma's house. 2 days later, on a trip back, my wife and I took a road trip. My back gave. We're not talking about it was hurting a little bit. We're talking about I was sitting in the passenger seat. We got out, or we stopped to get gas, and I couldn't move. My wife said, get out and pay for the gas. So I went to move my leg out the door, and it wouldn't go. The pain was so excruciating that for 2 weeks, I was on my back in the middle of the living room floor. That's where I slept. That's where I stayed when I wasn't moving around in ways that I had to, like going to the bathroom and stuff like that. I threw my back out, and it took months before there wasn't pain every time I moved. I mean, I really seriously messed up my back. And I've always had back problems, but this was about the worst. All because I didn't ask someone to help me. All because I didn't call someone and say, especially in this day of Facebook and Twitter, when I can get the word out and say, hey, I need somebody to help me do this. Anybody that's got some ramps, let's go knock this out. Do it together. It would have been done, and it would have saved me so much time. It would have saved me so much pain, but I chose not to do it. And then on the third example, sometimes I just don't want to wait for it. Sometimes I'm kind of in a hurry to get something done. I'm not patient at all. And I hurt myself badly again and again at the theater by not being patient. And here's what happened with that. This was so stupid. Oh, it was so stupid. And I could have hurt myself way worse than I did. But this was so stupid. So let me give you the background of what was going on here. We were doing a show called Bye Bye Birdie. And in the first scene of that show, it is required that there be a piano on stage because one of the lead characters is kind of banging out a song that he's going to try to use to promote this famous Elvis-type figure who's going into the army. I knew that we needed that piano, but I didn't want to just do a cheesy piano prop cardboard thing that you see a lot of times in shows. I really wanted to have a piano, but pianos are heavy, especially old-style pianos. And Bye Bye Birdie took place in the 1950s. So you had those. I wanted an old antique upright piano, and those things are heavy. But my idea was to take one that we had in the orchestra pit that nobody was using. It was an old Steinway. Nobody wanted it. It was just sitting there. They had been talking for months about how they could get that thing out of the orchestra pit because it was just taking up space. And it was a gift from one of the patrons, but it wouldn't stay in tune anymore. It's just so old and been moved around so long. The soundboard in there just would not hold a tune. It wasn't playable anymore. So it wasn't of use to anybody. And I said, well, what if I get it out by taking it apart and putting it back together on the top of the stage and just leaving the heavy pieces out of the insides, the soundboard, which is all the steel, this heavy, heavy metal. I'll leave all of that out, and then I'll just put the shell back together so that it looks like a regular piano, but at the same time, it's much lighter. We can put it on wheels. We can move it around the set, no problems, and we'll have a great prop. Well, the theater manager said that's a great idea. If you can get it out of the pit by doing that, that's fine. Well, to get it out of the pit, I was going to have to take it apart, like I said, and my idea first was to take the soundboard out first. This was an old Steinway, like I said, and I found that in order to get the soundboard out, I was going to have to take it apart from the front, and that meant laying it down on its back. I don't know if you've ever moved a piano before, especially one of those old, ancient upright pianos, but they are as heavy as a house. I mean, they are extremely heavy, and I knew that I did need help laying this thing down and moving it around. So I planned on one Saturday, I had a couple of guys that were going to come in and help me lay this down, and we were going to get it where I could start working on it. Well, something happened, and I can't remember what it was, but both of these people called and said, I'm not going to be able to make it. I am so sorry. We'll just have to postpone this, and we can do it later. I promise we'll get back to you, but I can't make it today. And both of them did. I was in one of my moods to where I could not wait to get started on making this wonderful prop. I was excited about it. It was going to be a work of art, and I did not want to wait. I didn't want to delay. No postponing was there going to be for me. So I made the decision that I'm going to see if I can't lay it down myself. My thoughts were, it's gravity. Even if I drop it, what's the worst that's going to happen? I break a couple of things, and even if I break it, I can still break it apart and take it out. It's not going to hurt anything if I break the thing. So I tipped it over a little bit to see what kind of leverage I was going to have, and it felt like, I think I'll be able to lay this down. So I got behind it, I tipped it back towards me, and had a good grip on it, made sure I had a good grip. I was even ready to drop it if the time came that I needed to. And I got to about a foot off the ground and realized if I go any further, I am going to completely ruin my back again, and it's going to be bad. And I only had seconds to make the decision to drop the piano. What am I going to do? I have no choice. I got to drop it. And I've only got seconds to make that decision because something's going to happen. Something's going to break, either me or this piano. So I decided I'm just going to drop it. It's only a foot. It'll make a loud noise, and it probably won't even hurt it beyond using it as a prop. So I dropped the piano on the ground. Here's the problem. I didn't pay attention to where my feet were. And I dropped that ancient, old piano, heavy, tall, upright, directly on my two big toes. Both of my big toes, it got just the edges of my feet, and it got both of my big toes. I have not experienced pain like that in my life. I broke my arm once, but I don't think the pain, at least immediately after, was anywhere near as bad as this was. I saw white light. I couldn't make a noise. I was in shock. And I bent down to try to pick up the piano. It wasn't going to come. I tried to pull my feet out, and they weren't going to come. I thought for a second I was going to be stuck there. I didn't know what I was going to do, and I was sure my toes were crushed. I was sure that my big toes, the bones, were just crushed to bits. I managed to kind of maneuver my feet enough out so that I could get my feet out from under it, and it banged on down that last inch. And I just sat there, and eventually I screamed. Just kind of had to let out some primal yell, and I screamed. There was nobody else there but me. And the pain felt like my toes were bleeding. It felt like it had crushed those toes to the point where they were just squelchy, bleeding nubs. And I managed to get my shoes off and gently take my socks off. I was amazed when I took off my shoes and did not see any blood. And I took my socks off, and the toes were actually able to move. They were very numb, and at the same time, there was sharp pain. You probably know what I'm talking about, but I could move them. The bones weren't broken. At least they didn't feel that way at the time. I wasn't sure. I thought maybe they weren't, but I thought, we'll see what's going to happen in the next few hours. Well, they didn't swell or anything like that. They were painful for the next couple of days, but it wasn't anywhere near as bad as I thought it was going to be. And both toenails went completely black. And eventually, both toenails popped off. I lost both of those toenails. But the main pain was right at the beginning. That was the worst part of it. And eventually I was able to get that soundboard out. There was a lot of problems getting that out because of the screws. They were old and rusted in there, and there's a lot of trouble getting that thing apart. And I ended up having to destroy some wood and then recutting some wood planking to make replacement wood for the piano to make it back into a workable prop. And it's now there at the theater, and it's a beautiful prop piano. It's one of my favorite things I've ever done. But I could have really hurt myself badly in that situation just because I didn't want to wait, just because I wanted to get that done right then, right there, to satisfy my craving to work on a prop. Had I waited till the next weekend, that never would have happened, probably. Or even if I'd have thought it through, there are ways I'm sitting here thinking now that I probably could have gotten it done that would have been a lot more safe and would have had me completely out of the way as I lowered the piano using levers and all kinds of stuff. But I didn't do any of that. I just went by the seat of my pants without any help, and a catastrophe happened, or almost happened. It was a catastrophe feeling at the time. It just was awful. So there are 3 examples of situations where I didn't want to ask for help, and I should have. So let me go back and look at those things again and see what I could have done. With the building of the sets in the first one, because I'm creative and I have these ideas in my head, I should have delegated more to the people in my crew and allowed their creativity to come through. And I think it would have been better all the way around. I think the set would have been a little more lively. And I've tried to do that lately when I built sets, and I haven't done it in a while. Actually, now there's a guy that builds sets there at the theater that if I ever do a show, hopefully he'll do my sets, and I won't have to touch him because he is phenomenal. But if I build a set from now on, I'm going to make sure that I delegate, and I'm going to use the artistic nature of the people around me and the cast and the crew and allow them to have their art be seen in the sets and not just selfishly take it upon myself. I think it'll be helpful for everybody, and it will be a lot less stressful to me. Secondly, when I moved that lawnmower, I should have asked somebody. I should have done as my grandma, my wise old grandma, said. She's lived a long time, and she knows a whole lot more than I do about life. And she was right. I should have asked somebody. And I'm going to urge you, if you've ever got something like that, that's going to be a physical situation, it might hurt you, ask somebody for help. It will be so much better in the long run. And then for the Bye Bye Birdie piano, I was just an idiot. Who lowers a piano by themselves? I wouldn't want the strongest person I know to try to do that. And I am not a very strong guy. I'm an average guy and probably a little weaker, in muscle tone than the average guy. And I tried it and it didn't work. And my toes suffered for that. So what I'm thinking that maybe we should do is ask ourselves some questions the next time we have a task and we're wondering, should I ask for help? And you're kind of mulling that over in your mind and you're making the decision of whether or not you're going to ask somebody to help you with something. Here's some questions you can ask. And guess what? There are 7 of them. Number 1, is there an offer to help already on the table? If yes, then think about the following questions and act appropriately. But if there's already an offer, go ahead and get the help. I'll tell you that right now. So number 1, is there an offer of help already? Number 2, is there the potential of harm if I go it alone? If the answer to that is yes, get help. Number 3, is help even available? Most of the time it is. Most of the time you know somebody that can help. So go ahead and get that help. Allow people to shoulder your burden. Number 4, can it actually wait until help is available? Like the Bye Bye Birdie piano, if I had just waited until it was available, none of that would have happened. I wouldn't have had to experience some of the most horrible pain I've ever experienced. Number 5, will you or others benefit? That's something I talked about with the building the sets. Other people would have benefited more if I'd have been more accepting of letting other people help me in the past when I built sets. And I'm going to try to keep that in mind from now on because I want other people to benefit, not only through experience, them getting experiences, but also it's a blessing when someone gets to help you and serve. It's a blessing to them. I used to have a friend who would offer to help me do things, or I think a couple of times he offered to buy lunch and stuff and that like that. And I would say, no. And I mean, I will stand firm with that type of thing. And he'd say, don't you steal my blessing. Don't steal my blessing. And it would make me laugh. But you know what? He's got a point. Don't steal someone's blessing. Allow them to help you because it makes them feel good. It makes you feel good. It strengthens your friendship. Accept that help. Number 6, how much time will it save? You have a valuable resource. Your most valuable resource, some would say, is your time. How much time will it save to let somebody help you? Usually a lot. And that's time you can spend doing other things. And then number 7, how much will it ease your stress to get help? You need stress relief probably just as badly as I do, and I need stress relief. I put too much on myself. And so from now on, I'm going to ask for help because it's okay to ask for help. And I finally come to that conclusion after over 43 years of life. Most of that time when I needed help and was able to accept it or reject it, I rejected it. I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to let people help me, and I'm going to be thankful for that. And I think you should too. So let's talk about some things that are going to be some housekeeping for a while in every episode. And the first one is the Health Journey 2017. Health Journey 2017 started at 190 pounds. I started this last week. I talked all about it. It was the whole topic of the episode. And I made a promise that I was going to tell you all about it every week, tell you where I messed up, where I succeeded, and where I stood scale-wise. So when I weighed in this Wednesday morning before I left out for work to come to Walterboro, South Carolina, I weighed in at 188 pounds. That's 2 pounds from 190. And that's my goal, 2 pounds a week. It could have been more. It wasn't because I didn't mess up. I messed up quite a lot this past week. In fact, right after I recorded that episode, I immediately turned around and messed up. But I promised that I was going to get back on the horse and I wasn't going to let it get me down, and I didn't. And because of that, I did make the 2 pounds that I planned on. And so hopefully I'll do better next week and have a little bit better than that. But I'm okay with that. 2 pounds down from last week is happiness for me, so I'm good with that. I did figure out one really cool thing that I'm going to be doing that's going to help me on this. I may have mentioned that I love colas and I love the carbonated drinks, but I had to give them up. One thing that I have figured out that I can do with drinking water, you can get sparkling water, basically club soda type stuff. It's carbonated water. It's all it is. But you can use those flavoring squeeze. I wouldn't use the packets. I don't know exactly how well those would do with the sparkling water. It seems like it would make it fizz up, but the little squirt bottles you can get of the flavoring, I got an 8-pack of LaCroix lemon flavored sparkling water because it was citrus and I wanted some orange. I wanted to try to make something that tasted kind of like either Fanta or maybe the orange Kickstart that you've heard me talk about. So I got some orange flavoring, and I got some LaCroix lemon-flavored sparkling water, and I just squeeze the right amount into the can right after I open it and kind of move it around a little bit, not so it doesn't come out of the can, but, just kind of get it mixed up, and it is wonderful. It's going to really be a big help. I'm still going to try to wean myself down to mainly regular water, but when I'm really in the mood for that soda type feel, I'm going to keep those LaCroix right handy and those flavors so I can have that. And I've really enjoyed that. It's been great. Next on the agenda, I want to tell you about my Patreon account. I've told you that I was going to have a Patreon account. What is that? Well, that is a way that you can help me pay the bills of this podcast, the hosting, web presence, and things like that. I actually want to get a WordPress website for this podcast so I can do some more detailed type things with it. For instance, from now on, the show notes are going to be in blog form. I've decided I'm going to try to write a blog as the show notes and just go right along everything. Go right along my bullet points. You can hear the paper right here. That's my paper that's got all the bullet points on there, and that's pretty much what the show notes have been. But I'm going to be writing more of a blog type post to be the show notes. I want to go to WordPress.org for it. I've been using the website that Libsyn offers, but it's a little limited for me, and I want to do a little bit better for you if I'm going to keep this podcast going. And that costs money, and so does the hosting for this. So I'm trying to pay those bills, and Patreon is a way that you can help. You can pledge as little as $1 per episode or as much as $50 per episode if you want to. All you got to do is go to patreon.com. That's patreon.com. In the search bar, look up Road Noise Podcast, and it'll bring you right up to my page. And you can pledge anywhere from $1 an episode, $5 an episode, $20 an episode, or $50 an episode. And I have reasons for those larger pledges, and there is a specific reason for that. I'm not saying I expect anybody to do that, but I do have reasons for that, and I'll explain that in an episode. I'm probably going to do an entire episode just on the whole Patreon thing to give you a really deep explanation of everything and why I've decided to do this. But for right now, just the main reason is to help me pay the bills for this podcast, because I have other podcasts that I'm going to have to do to supplement my business, and I'm going to try to monetize those too. But every time I do a new podcast, it requires me to have more money come out of my pocket, and I just have to start limiting what I do. So in order for this podcast to stay, then, if the other one's going to help my business and this one is going to stay, if you want it, then I'm going to need to have a little bit of help. And that's where Patreon comes in. So go to patreon.com if you'd like to even go, even if you're not planning on helping me out monetarily, just go and look at it. Read the description, see what it's all about, so you'll be informed. And then if you decide you'd like to help, that'd be great. If not, that's great too, because I'm just happy to have you as my friend. And lastly, I'm going to give you this week's positive review. may or may not be one of the last positive reviews. I'm deciding on some different segments for this show, and the positive review may go away, or it may not. Kind of depends on how I feel. But right now, you have one coming, and it's for auphonic.com. What is Auphonic? AUPHONIC.com. Auphonic.com is a place you can go to upload wave files or audio files, and it will do audio processing for you without you having to go to a bunch of the trouble. And it's something that I do kind of as the last piece of polish for my episodes, and I've just started back using it. I used it for the Q1 Go show to help me with leveling some stuff because Tony and I would kind of get at different levels sometimes, and it helped me there. I haven't really needed to use it with this podcast a whole lot because it's just my voice, and so I haven't used it, but I've decided to go back to it because I've got a little bit of some background noise that I've heard since I've stopped doing the recording the episodes while I drive. When I was doing that, you couldn't hear it because you had the noise of the road, and it just blended in so well with that, you couldn't tell. But once I stopped doing that, once I stopped having any background noise, I heard some mechanical, a little bit of a hiss and stuff, and I've tried some other things to fix it. Well, I ran it through Auphonic last week, and it completely took it out, and it was wonderful. I'm starting to use it again. Auphonic.com is a place you can go. If you're an audio editor and you want to just polish it up a little better, that's a good way to do it. You can do 2 hours for free if you just do the online Auphonic. You can set up an account, and you can get 2 hours per month free. Full production stuff, 2 hours per month free. And that is usually plenty for me. But I'm probably going to go ahead and buy the desktop version because I've got other podcasts coming, and I'm going to use up more than 2 hours per month once that starts. So if you're interested in that type of thing and you want to just kind of give your audio recordings that little extra professional sound, auphonic.com may be a way for you to go. Well, that's it for episode number 67. I hope you got something out of it, and I hope you've come to the same decision that it's okay to ask for help. If you'd like to get in touch with me, here's how you can do it. You can call the voicemail line at 706-408-7456. That's 706-408-7456. You can email me at feedback@michaelblackston.com. That's feedback@michaelblackston.com. Or you can contact me right there at the website at roadnoisepodcast.com. You can go there, and I've got all of the buttons for social media, iTunes, and all that jazz. And I'd love to hear from you. So until episode number 68, which may or may not be the Business on a Shoestring episode, we'll just have to see. I'm Michael Blackston, your host for Road Noise, and together we're learning to live life 1 mile at a time.